You know, we used to have a very different idea of superheroes until we first came across Peacemaker, who changed our perspective quite a bit. If you know about his antics, then you probably love him or hate him, but you definitely can't ignore him. This guy's been doing absolutely insane stuff since 1966, and trust us, after digging through decades of comics, shows, and the wildest storylines DC has to offer, we've come across some crazy facts that'll make your jaw drop. From dismembering alternate versions of himself to fighting cosmic beings with toilet seat helmets, Peacemaker is certifiably nuts in the best way possible. So buckle up, because we're here to explore why this peace-loving maniac is hands down DC's wildest hero. That said, before we get into our list, we do have a very quick request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to the channel. It's a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. He literally dismembered his own alternate self with a bone saw. Okay, let's start with something that still has us questioning reality. In Peacemaker Season 2, Christopher Smith does something so psychologically disturbing that it makes every other violent act look like child's play. After killing an alternate dimension version of himself, Chris and Vigilante spend an entire sequence chopping up the corpse with bone saws so they can fit it into an incinerator. Picture this. Our hero is literally sawing off limbs from his own dead corpse while Foxy Shazam's Evil Thoughts plays in the background. This whole scene is so twisted that even Vigilante is grinning like a demon, completely aware of how insane it is. What makes this even more messed up is the psychological impact. Chris is essentially dismembering himself, which has to be one of the most horrifying forms of self-harm ever depicted. They even lose track of the severed head, and it bounces across the floor like a sick game. This moment perfectly captures why Peacemaker is one of DC's wildest characters. He won't hesitate to literally cut himself to pieces to achieve his goals. His father was an actual Nazi SS officer who haunts him. Here's where Peacemaker's origin gets really dark, and it explains a lot about his mental state. In the comics, Christopher Smith's real father was Wolfgang Schmidt, an Austrian Nazi who joined the SS and became the commandant of the Szlachta concentration camp in Poland during World War II. This guy wasn't just following orders, he was actively participating in the Holocaust, executing Hitler's final solution with disturbing enthusiasm. When the war ended and the Allies closed in, Wolfgang chose to kill himself rather than face justice for his war crimes. But here's the really twisted part. Even after his death, Wolfgang continues to torment his son through hallucinations and ghostly appearances, constantly trying to push Christopher towards embracing Nazi ideology. These aren't just random nightmares. Christopher genuinely believes his father's spirit is trapped in his helmet, along with the souls of everyone he's killed. This psychological torture explains why Peacemaker is so unhinged. He's literally fighting against becoming the monster his father was, while his father's voice keeps whispering hate in his ear from beyond the grave. He believes dead people's souls live in his helmet. Speaking of psychological trauma, let's touch on one of Peacemaker's most bizarre beliefs, which we mentioned in the last section. In the funny books, Christopher Smith genuinely thinks that every person he kills has their soul trapped inside his helmet, creating a twisted supernatural prison on his head. This isn't metaphorical. In his mind, he's carrying around dozens, maybe hundreds of tortured spirits everywhere he goes. Imagine walking around thinking you're wearing a helmet full of screaming ghosts who are there because you murdered them. The comics describe how these voices torment him, sometimes making him see the face of his Nazi father in everyone he fights. This delusion got so bad that in the 1988 comic series, Peacemaker completely lost his grip on reality and started attacking innocent people because he thought they were his father. It's like having a horror movie playing in your head 24/7, except you're both the victim and the monster. This belief system shows just how damaged Peacemaker's psyche is. He's created his own personal hell that he carries around everywhere, but somehow he still thinks he's the good guy. He massacred an entire village of innocent civilians in Vietnam. Before becoming Peacemaker, Christopher Smith was a Vietnam War vet, and his service record includes one of the most horrific war crimes imaginable. During his time in combat, Smith's psychological instability and violent tendencies led him to slaughter an entire village of innocent civilians, including women and children. This wasn't collateral damage or a mistake. It was a deliberate massacre that got him court-martialed and sentenced to life in prison. The trauma of growing up with a Nazi father had already broken something in Christopher's mind, and the violence of war just made it worse. He was so willing to shoot first and justify later that he crossed the the ultimate line and committed genocide. What's really messed up is that the US government saw this war criminal and thought, yep, this guy would make a perfect superhero. They literally took someone who massacred civilians and turned him into Peacemaker, proving that sometimes the cure is worse than the disease. This backstory shows that Chris's peace through violence philosophy was already completely twisted long before he put on the helmet. He led a killing contest with Bloodsport using allied soldiers as targets. One of Peacemaker's most shocking moments happens not long after meeting Bloodsport in the Suicide Squad. These two supposedly heroic characters were so competitive and psychotic that they almost immediately started a sick game as soon as they were out of prison and on the island of Corto Maltese. They had a sort of unspoken competition and decided to try to one-up each other with who could kill the most people in the most creative ways. What makes this absolutely insane is that they didn't even bother to check who they were killing. The outpost they completely devastated turned out to be full of Corto Maltesian rebels who were actually their allies, fighting against the same government that was opposing Task Force X on their mission. So not only did Peacemaker and Bloodsport commit mass murder, they also screwed over their own mission by killing people who were trying to help them. This moment perfectly showcases Peacemaker's twisted priorities. His need to prove he's the ultimate killing machine is more important than actually achieving peace or completing the mission. His helmets have the most ridiculous powers ever conceived. Let's talk about Peacemaker's collection of helmets because these things are absolutely bonkers. In the Peacemaker TV show, his father, Augie Smith, aka White Dragon, built him an arsenal of high-tech headgear that ranges from useful to completely insane. We've got the obvious ones like the X-ray vision and sonic boom capabilities, but then it just gets weird. There's an underwater breathing helmet, an anti-gravity helmet that just floats away like a balloon, and my personal favorite, the Scabies for All helmet that gives everyone within 1 mile scabies except the user. According to White Dragon, every man should get scabies at least once in his life, which is possibly the most deranged parenting advice ever given. Then there's the mysterious Bound for Good helmet, and nobody knows what that does. Theories range from forcing the wearer to do only good deeds to having exorcist abilities. The fact that a white supremacist Nazi sympathizer built these things for his son really explains a lot about their bizarre and often counterproductive nature. It's like someone gave a mad scientist unlimited resources and daddy issues. He was almost the star of Watchmen. Here's a mind-blowing piece of comic history that changes everything about Watchmen. Legendary author Alan Moore originally planned to use Peacemaker and other Charlton Comics characters for his dark deconstruction of superheroes with the working title Who Killed the Peacemaker. DC said no because they wanted to keep these characters available for regular continuity, so Moore created new versions instead. The comedian from Watchmen is directly based on Peacemaker, which explains why both characters have that same twisted peace through violence philosophy. What makes this even crazier is that after DC rejected Moore's pitch, they gave Peacemaker a darker 1988 revamp that ended up looking almost exactly like the comedian anyways. So basically, DC refused to let Moore turn Peacemaker into a dark, morally complex anti-hero, then immediately turned him into a dark, morally complex anti-hero themselves. This connection means that Peacemaker is basically the spiritual father of one of comics' most important and influential stories, even though most people don't realize it. He died fighting Eclipso in DC's most brutal team massacre. Peacemaker's death in the comics was absolutely brutal and happened during one of DC's most violent storylines. When the cosmic villain Eclipso took over the South American country of Parador, Amanda Waller assembled a team called the Shadow Fighters to stop him. This roster included Peacemaker alongside other heroes like the Creeper, Dr. Midnight, and Wildcat 2. What happened next was a complete massacre that makes most horror movies look tame. Eclipso and his forces systematically slaughtered almost the entire team, with Peacemaker meeting his end when he crashed a helicopter into one of Eclipso's tanks in a desperate suicide attack. The crazy part is that his death, along with most of his teammates, was basically glossed over afterward because these characters were considered too obscure to matter. To be fair, this was from a comic event from 1989, but DC literally killed off Peacemaker in a helicopter crash, then forgot about him for years. He would eventually return from the dead with little explanation because apparently even death can't stop this maniac from pursuing his twisted version of peace. He became Blue Beetle's mentor in the most unlikely partnership. After mysteriously returning from the dead, Peacemaker became a mentor to Jaime Reyes, the new Blue Beetle, in what might be comics' most unlikely partnership. At first, Chris tried to hide his identity by claiming to be someone named Mitchell Black, but the truth eventually came out. What makes this relationship so insane is the dynamic. You've got this traumatized, violent anti-hero trying to guide a teenage superhero who actually wants to help people. Peacemaker acted like a gruff uncle figure, wanting to keep Blue Beetle safe while being too emotionally damaged to admit he cared. The partnership worked because Blue Beetle represented everything Peacemaker could have been if he hadn't been broken by his Nazi father and the horrors of war. This found family dynamic is exactly the kind of thing James Gunn loves to explore, which makes it perfect for potential future DCU storylines. The fact that a mass-murdering war criminal could become a positive influence on a young hero shows there might be hope for Christopher Smith after all, even if he'll never fully escape his violent past. He fought the Joker and got poisoned by Joker toxin. Yup, Peacemaker has tangled with the clown prince of crime himself, and it went about as badly as you might expect. As part of the Suicide Squad, Christopher Smith faced off against the Joker and ended up getting hit with Joker toxin along with several other team members. What makes this encounter particularly insane is that even with Peacemaker's willingness to use lethal force, something Batman won't do, he still couldn't put an end to the Joker's reign of terror. Think about that for a second. A guy who's willing to massacre entire villages and lead killing contests couldn't take down a clown with no superpowers. This really shows just how dangerous and unpredictable the Joker is, but it also highlights one of Peacemaker's biggest weaknesses. Despite all his violence and military training, he's still just a traumatized man in a helmet, and mental warfare isn't something you can solve with bullets. The Joker probably found Peacemaker's psychological damage hilarious and used it against him. Getting poisoned by Joker toxin must have been a nightmare for someone who already hallucinates dead people on a regular basis. His original costume design looks like a flying toilet seat. Let's address the elephant in the room. Peacemaker's helmet design is absolutely ridiculous and everybody knows it. The original 1960s comics gave Christopher Smith a chrome helmet that looks suspiciously like a toilet seat, and somehow this became his iconic look. The dove symbol on his chest is supposed to represent peace, but when you're wearing what appears to be a bathroom fixture on your head while carrying enough weapons to level a small country, the symbolism, it gets a bit mixed. What makes this even funnier is that the comics tried to play it straight. This was supposed to be a serious peace envoy who just happened to look like he raided a hardware store. The helmet could fire laser beams, which at least gave it some functionality beyond its questionable fashion choices. James Gunn and John Cena have embraced the absurdity of the design, acknowledging that it's weird while also making it work within the context of the show. Sometimes the most ridiculous elements of comics become the most memorable, and Peacemaker's toilet seat helmet is definitely unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. He name-dropped Matter-Eater Lad as his most insane team-up. In one of the HBO series' most bizarre moments, and that's saying something, Peacemaker casually mentions that he once teamed up with Matter-Eater Lad, and the experience completely broke his sense of what's normal. For those who don't know, Matter-Eater Lad is exactly what his name suggests. He's a member of the Legion of Superheroes, a team from the far future, and he's from the planet Bismal, where people can literally eat any form of matter, no matter how indestructible. According to Chris, this version was completely unhinged and ate an entire Wendy's restaurant when they took too long making his French fries. Just imagine trying to have a serious superhero mission while your partner is literally consuming buildings because he's impatient for fast food. This throwaway reference is brilliant because it shows that even in Peacemaker's world of infinite weirdness, there are still things that can break his brain. The fact that a guy who dismembers alternate versions of himself thinks Matter-Eater Lad is too crazy really puts things in perspective. It also proves that the DC universe is full of absolutely bonkers characters that make Peacemaker almost seem normal by comparison. He can activate his helmet powers by talking to them. One of the most ridiculous aspects of Peacemaker's technology is that his helmets are voice-activated, and anyone who knows the command phrases can use them. You can literally just put on a helmet and say things like activate sonic boom or activate x-ray vision, and yeah, there you go, you've got superpowers. What makes this even more insane is that there's no security system, no genetic locks, nothing to prevent enemies from stealing his helmets and using them against him. Vigilante, Leota, and other characters have successfully used Peacemaker's helmets just by knowing the right words to say. This means that Augie Smith, a white supremacist with serious engineering skills, basically created the world's most dangerous party trick. Imagine if Iron Man's armor could be operated by anyone who knew the password. That's essentially what Peacemaker's walking around with. The show even demonstrates how dangerous this is when the helmets fall into the wrong hands, but Chris keeps using them anyways because apparently convenience trumps security when you're a violent vigilante. He was based on a 1960s diplomat who collected massive weapons. The original Peacemaker from 1966 was completely different from the traumatized war criminal we know today. Christopher Clyde Smith was a pacifist diplomat working for the Geneva Arms Conference who was so committed to peace that he surrounded himself with irony. This guy had a secret base called the Peace Palace that was absolutely loaded with weapons. Tanks, jets, laser cannons, you name it. He claimed he collected all these instruments of death to take them out of circulation, but then immediately started using them whenever diplomacy failed. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. A peace envoy who hoards weapons for peace while wearing military gear and blasting people with laser helmets. His thought balloons revealed that he had sworn never to use violence, but then he'd immediately break that oath whenever the plot demanded it. This original version was supposed to be heroic, but when you really think about it, he's just as psychologically unstable as the modern version. The idea of a diplomat who solves problems with secret weapons collections is so absurd that it had to evolve into the darker, more honest take we have today. He starred in Grant Morrison's deconstructed version of Watchmen. Grant Morrison took Peacemaker and put him into one of the most mind-bending comic stories ever created, the multiversity Pax Americana, which is basically Morrison's response to Watchmen. In this reality-twisting tale, Peacemaker is part of a government super team where he's ordered to assassinate the president in broad daylight and expect Captain Atom to bring him back to life. The plan goes horribly wrong when Captain Atom doesn't return from the dead as expected, leaving Peacemaker beaten to a pulp by the Secret Service while refusing to explain his actions. This story is told through a fractured timeline that jumps back and forth without warning, making the reader feel as confused and disconnected as the characters. What makes this version of Peacemaker particularly insane is his absolute commitment to the mission, even when everything falls apart around him. He's willing to murder a president and destroy his own life for a plan that might not even work, all in the name of some twisted greater good. Morrison uses Peacemaker to explore the same themes as Watchmen, but pushes them even further into madness and moral ambiguity. He dropped 220 F-bombs in 3 episodes for peace. The HBO Peacemaker series holds some impressive records when it comes to profanity, and Christopher Smith is leading the charge in creative cursing. The first 3 episodes of the show contained a total of 220 F-bombs, with Chris and Harcourt tied at 14 each in just the season premiere. What makes this especially hilarious is that the show actually keeps track of these statistics, breaking down which characters are the biggest offenders and even counting F-bombs sung during the opening credits. Apparently, the band Foxy Shazam managed to work 2 F-bombs into the theme song, which might be a first for a DC show. The fact that a character whose entire philosophy is based on achieving peace needs to swear this much just to have a conversation really emphasizes how dysfunctional and angry he is underneath all that patriotic bluster. It's like his mouth is as violent as his actions, and he can't express any emotion without dropping verbal bombs. This isn't just edgy for the sake of being edgy, it's character development through creative profanity. His kill count started at 5 people in episode 1. Peacemaker doesn't waste time when it comes to living up to his violent reputation. In just the first episode of his HBO series, 5 people died in the name of peace. His one-night stand Annie, Goff's wife, his 2 kids, and a bodyguard. What makes this particularly disturbing is how casually these deaths are treated, almost like a running tally in a video game. The show makes note of the score, with Vigilante getting 3 kills while Peacemaker and Harcourt are tied at 1 each. Now, admittedly, each of these kills were actually aliens that were just posing as humans, but this body count approach to heroism really drives home how warped Christopher Smith's worldview is. He's not just willing to kill to achieve peace, he's actively racking up casualties like he's competing in some twisted Olympics. The fact that children are included in his kill count from the early days of the HBO show reminds us that there are no moral boundaries he won't cross if he thinks it serves the greater good. Even if this is where Peacemaker starts to have second thoughts about following orders, it's still a brutal reminder that he's not a hero in any traditional sense. He's a weapon pointed at problems until they stop moving. He can breathe underwater, has anti-gravity, and gives everyone scabies. The full range of Peacemaker's helmet abilities reads like a list written by someone having a fever dream. Beyond the obvious combat applications like sonic booms and X-ray vision, Augie Smith created some truly bizarre specialized equipment. The underwater breathing helmet makes tactical sense for amphibious operations, but then you get to the anti-gravity helmet that just makes the wearer float away like a balloon. Vigilante lost it forever because it literally drifted off into the sky. But the crown jewel of insanity has to be the Scabies for All helmet, which we already mentioned, which gives everyone within a 1-mile radius scabies, except the person wearing it. There's also the mysterious Bound for Good helmet, whose function remains completely unknown, but the fact that these helmets exist at all shows that Peacemaker's equipment is as psychologically damaged as he is. He fought interdimensional imps that reference Mr. Mixie's Pitlick. Season 2 of Peacemaker has introduced some cosmic-level weirdness that hints at threats way beyond anything we've seen before. In the alternate dimension that Chris discovers, his father Augie and brother Keith casually mention dealing with dimensional imps from a Munchkin dimension. These aren't just random creatures. The dialogue strongly implies these are members of the 5th dimension, the same realm that Mr. Miggs's Pitlick calls home. For those who aren't aware, Mix's Pitlick is basically a god who can reshape reality on a whim and regularly makes Superman look like an ant. The fact that the Smith family has apparently killed these beings and even found one dead in Keith's truck engine block is absolutely insane. Either the Smiths are way more powerful than we realized, or these particular imps were having an off day. What makes this even crazier is that the show treats it like a joke, with references to giant peppermint sticks and general interdimensional shenanigans. This casual mention of reality warping entities suggests that Peacemaker's world is about to get a whole lot weirder and more dangerous. He starred in DC's most disturbing comic book scene ever. Garth Ennis, the creator of The Boys, wrote a Peacemaker comic called Disturbing the Peace that lives up to its title in the most horrifying way possible. This isn't the dark comedy of the HBO series, this is a genuinely disturbing psychological examination of Christopher Smith that strips away any humor or redemption. The story is framed as an interview with a psychiatrist who's trying to evaluate whether Peacemaker is fit for a new assignment, and what she discovers is absolutely nightmarish. Unlike other Peacemaker stories that at least try to make him sympathetic, Ennis presents Chris as a genuinely broken and dangerous individual whose heroic actions are just elaborate justifications for his need to commit violence. The artwork by Gary Brown emphasizes the bleakness and appropriately grim visuals that make every page feel uncomfortable to look at. This version of Peacemaker has no redeeming qualities, no funny moments, and no hope for rehabilitation. He's just a weapon that thinks it's a person. It's the kind of comic that makes you question whether some characters are too damaged to ever be truly heroic. He's connected to a conspiracy involving Maxwell Lord and Brother Eye. Here's where Peacemaker's story connects to some of DC's biggest and most complex storylines. Through his involvement with Checkmate and the GORT satellite system, Christopher Smith is tied to the machinations of Maxwell Lord and the Brother Eye surveillance network. Lord, the psychic villain who can mind control even Superman, has been confirmed as part of the DCU and was played by Sean Gunn in the recent Superman film. Brother Eye is an artificial intelligence that can take control of people and turn them into cyborg weapons, making it one of the most dangerous threats in the DC universe. The fact that Peacemaker has connections to both these elements suggests that his future storylines could involve cosmic-level threats that go way beyond his usual street-level violence. This conspiracy also ties into Blue Beetle's origin story, since the Scarab technology has been experimented on by the same forces that created Brother Eye. If these connections play out in future DCU projects, Peacemaker could end up being one of the key figures in stopping a technological apocalypse, which would be the ultimate irony for someone who solves most problems by shooting them. He has a bizarre phobia of little people and homunculi. In one of the show's stranger character details, Peacemaker reveals that he has a genuine phobia of homunculi, artificially created miniature humans. This fear is so specific and weird that it really highlights just how many psychological issues Christopher Smith is carrying around. During a conversation about his various neuroses, he mentions this phobia while also referencing Dollman, a real DC superhero who can shrink while maintaining normal human strength. The fact that Peacemaker accurately describes Dollman's abilities suggests he's either researched his fears extensively or had some kind of traumatic encounter with shrinking people. This phobia adds another layer to his already complex psychological profile. He's afraid of Nazis because of his father, dead people because of his guilt, and now tiny people for reasons we can only guess at. While some of these fears are more rational than others, it still really underlines the point that Christopher Smith's psychological profile isn't exactly normal. The specificity of being afraid of homunculi rather than just small people in general suggests there's probably some deeply traumatic backstory we haven't learned about just yet. He made Batmite canon in the DCEU universe. One of the most randomly insane things Peacemaker has done for the DC universe is to confirm that Batmite exists in the same reality as the Ben Affleck Batman. According to John Economos, this reality-warping imp who dresses in a mini batsuit and obsesses over the Dark Knight is real and active. Just think about the implications here. At some point, the grimdark "Do you bleed?" version of Batman had to deal with an annoying interdimensional fanboy following him around and probably trying to help with his missions. The mental image of Ben Affleck's angry, violent Batman trying to maintain his serious reputation while being pestered by a magical imp in a costume is absolutely hilarious. This throwaway reference also connects to the larger multiverse themes that run through Peacemaker's storylines, suggesting that reality in the DCU is way more flexible and weird than most people realize. The fact that Batmite exists in a universe where superheroes get their necks snapped and cities get destroyed really emphasizes how tonally diverse the DC multiverse can be. It's like finding out that the Teletubbies exist in the same world as the Dark Knight. He uses a mysterious Human Torpedo helmet with unknown limits. Among all of Peacemaker's ridiculous helmets, the Human Torpedo might be the most ominously named and least understood. While we know it exists and has been referenced multiple times, the exact capabilities and limitations of this particular piece of headgear remain mysterious. The name suggests it either turns the wearer into a human projectile or gives them torpedo-like underwater capabilities, but given Augie Smith's track record of building completely unhinged technology, it could be literally anything. What makes this helmet particularly intriguing is that it's mentioned alongside other helmets whose functions are either well-known, like X-ray vision, or completely bonkers, like the Scabies helmet, putting it into a weird middle ground of potential functionality. We do get to see this helmet used near the end of Season 1, but given that most of his father's inventions are either extremely dangerous or completely useless, the Human Torpedo helmet is, unsurprisingly, both. He's potentially connected to Earth X and Nazi alternate dimensions. The latest season of Peacemaker has revealed what might be his most disturbing connection yet. The alternate dimension he's been hiding in appears to be Earth X, a reality where the Nazis won World War II. When Harcourt and the 11th Street kids follow Chris into this dimension, they start noticing disturbing details, like the complete absence of people of color and Nazi American flags on government desks. Keith Smith refers to non-white people as escaped prisoners who need to be rounded up, implying that this reality has implemented some form of systematic racial segregation, or worse. The fact that Peacemaker, whose father was a literal Nazi, finds this dimension appealing enough to want to stay there permanently is deeply troubling. Although he didn't notice that it was a Nazi world, despite a giant mural of Hitler, this suggests that despite all his character development, Peacemaker might still be susceptible to the poisonous ideology he claims to reject. Given that in this reality his father actually opposed the Nazis as opposed to joining them, this storyline forces viewers to confront the possibility that Peacemaker's journey towards redemption might not be as straightforward as it appeared. The connection to Earth X also ties into DC's larger multiverse mythology, where Nazi-dominated realities represent some of the darkest possible outcomes for humanity. Marvelous verdict. Peacemaker is here to stay. These crazy facts about Peacemaker prove he's not just DC's wildest hero, but possibly one of the most psychologically complex characters in all of comics. Christopher Smith consistently finds ways to push the boundaries of what we consider heroic behavior, but we think the ongoing Peacemaker series has really extended the popularity of the character with the mighty John Cena and a fantastic storyline. While apparently Season 3 is up in the air for universe-building reasons, all we can tell you is that the show is here to stay, and so is this bizarre protagonist. Don't forget to let us know in the comments down below what you think of Peacemaker and the crazy facts and adventures that make him such a wacky character in the DC universe. Also, feel free to point out anything that we might have missed in this video, but otherwise, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.